We've finished our Enduro Bike of the Year test, and one of our top 5 bikes is the Radon Swoop 170 9.0. You may well remember this from last year, where it actually won the category. It might not have won this year, but it's still a top contender. That's because the geometry, which hasn't actually changed for this year, is some of the most up-to-date out there. Thanks to a small triangular chip at the lowest shock mount, you've got 3 different geometry settings to choose from. I must admit, I spent most of my time in the lowest setting, which gives you a head angle of 64.4 degrees and a seat angle of 75 degrees, so plenty steep enough to make climbing efficient. The geometry chip also allows you to change bottom bracket height up to 13 millimeters. In its lowest setting, it means you've got a drop of 21 mils, which is massive on a 170mm travel bike. That sits the bottom bracket at 332 mil off the floor, which, if you're like me and love going around corners, feels fantastic. The bike we've chosen for the test this year does differ slightly from that of last year. The biggest change here though is the fork and shock. This year it comes from Fox rather than RockShox like last year. In this case we've got the Fox 36 fork up front and their DPX2 shock at the rear. These are from Fox's Performance Elite line, not the factory spec, which is why they don't have the Kashima coating on them. While Radon have kept the same brakes as last year in the shape of Magura's MT5s, they have changed the tyre specs slightly. They're still Schwalbe, but this time you get the soft Addix compound Magic Mary up front and a hands damp at the rear. The rear tyre is actually the Addix Speed Grip, so it rolls quite fast and is pretty good in most conditions, although it can feel a touch skitterish in the really wet on rocks and roots. But up front, that tall treaded Magic Mary really bites in well into the mud and seems to work pretty well across most conditions, whether it's dry or wet, and we're massive fans of that. Fox don't just provide the suspension on the Swoop, they also take care of the seat post, which in this case is a 150mm drop transfer. The remote's compact, small and easy to use, and we really like it. Like a number of the other bikes in the top 5, Radon have gone for SRAM's GX Eagle 12-speed transmission, which gives you a massive range of gears and just uses the single ring up front, so it's nice and simple to understand and easy to use. And although that bottom bracket is seriously low and you might be worried about damaging your chainring, luckily Radon have actually spec'd an E13 chain guide with a bash guard, so should you sump the bike out and smash into a pile of rocks, hopefully it'll be the chain guide taking the hit and not the ring. I chose to ride the 18-inch Swoop, which has a reach of 460mm, which is in fact quite a lot larger than many medium bikes out there in this category. But saying that, I found it an absolute dream to ride. The position's really natural and I love how low the bottom bracket is and how sunk into the bike you actually feel. Sling it into a tight, awkward Nadri section and it's amazing just how nimble and agile the Swoop can feel. The Swoop's light and feels really responsive. So that means power transfer feels direct, but also any change of direction you need to do from line to line or out of a turn or over a jump, it feels really taut and easy to maneuver. And while it does feel extremely agile, it's still stable and will take an absolute beating should you go and ride anything that's really, really rough. The Fox 36 up front isn't maybe quite as comfortable as, say, the RockShox Lyric, which we've seen on a couple of the other bikes in this category. But it's very supportive, though doesn't seem to flatten the trail quite as well or as easily maybe as the Lyric, which does feel a bit comfier on those really long, rough tracks where you get a little bit less through your hands. I did have to make some adjustments and spend a little bit of time getting the rear shock set up properly. That meant just playing with different levels of sag and also in the open position you can actually tweak the low speed compression, so I fiddled with that as well. I didn't actually have to change the volume spacer in the shock because it's still ramped up just about fine for the really big hits. In the end, it actually felt really balanced. I managed to get the front and rear working really well together. It was supple when it needed to be and, like I said, really dealt with the bigger stuff really well. That means that while it does ride really well straight off the bat, it does give you the opportunity to fettle and play around with the different settings so you can get a perfect setup for you, which is great. As a past winner, why didn't the Radon Swoop win again? Well, for me, it's a couple of things. While the geometry is bang up to date and feels fantastic on the trail, as does the suspension for the most part, I still think the RockShox Lyric fork has the edge over this particular model of the 36. I also think not everyone will sync well with the Magura brakes. The The levers feel a little bit squishy and the power is incredibly punchy. So not all of our testers really got on with them. All that being said, the Radon Swoop is still a fantastic bike. It's light, its angles are fantastic, it climbs really well, but going downhill, it's an absolute joy to ride. And so if you want a long travel, super capable bike, this is seriously worth considering.